If you've been playing Tears of the Kingdom, then you know there's pretty much something to find at every turn, whether you're in the sky, on the ground, or in the depths. It's pretty hard to stay focused on just one task when you see something in the distance and you just get that itch to go check it out. You might be in the sky exploring the islands, then spot a Gleeok and feel the need to engage with it, which only goes well if you're prepared for it, unless you're one of these guys. During the build up to Tears of the Kingdom, most of us were under the impression that the Sky Islands were the new thing, as that's what was advertised. They're supposed to be the defining factor to Zelda's newest installment, except this turned out to be only a small part of the much larger game. Enter the depths. It turns out there's a whole other world under Hyrule, and Nintendo successfully shielded this for the most part during their final marketing push. I for one was caught off guard by how vast the underworld is, and honestly had no idea what to do with it until about halfway through the main story. Because the game has so much freedom of personal choice, it got me thinking, do I actually enjoy exploring the depths, or do I prefer being in the sky? They both have their pros and cons, but I found my reasons for visiting each area to be completely different, so it all comes down to preference on exploration since they function separately and have their own set of rewards. When I first entered the depths towards the beginning of my playthrough and saw glooming enemies, I pretty much knew this area wasn't for me yet. In fact, even if this might be a reach, it kinda reminds me in a way of an area from a certain fan favorite game. Some of the best weapons, loot, and resources can all be found here. Additionally, it's really the only location you can find Zonite, which acts as a currency when it comes to building. I didn't know what Zonite was when I first went down, but upon discovering auto build, I quickly learned how necessary it was to collect it. The depths require resource management if you're wanting to successfully navigate around in the dark. You always want to be stocked up on bright blooms, arrows, Zonite, gloom-based materials, and the list goes on. This adds incentive to actually farm these items, because without them, unless you're just fearless, you'll probably want to come back at a later time unless you enjoy sprinting in the dark with no vehicle or light. I'm for sure guilty of this, but that's why I stayed away for a long while before stumbling across auto build. In my whole playthrough of Breath of the Wild and through the first half of my experience in Tears of the Kingdom, not once did I actually care to stock up on items besides some cooked meals. When traversing the overworld, you can rely on purchasing arrows, fighting enemies for weapons and materials, and you surely don't need to worry about a forever dwindling health bar. You can expect to gather everything you might need while completing a side adventure, mission, or even just basic exploration. The depths require you to completely revamp your approach to the game, and even though we all went about this in our own ways, we were all encouraged to manage our resources for traversal across the dark gloom. I for one am a simple builder. Some wheels, a platform, and control stick do the job for me. If you attach an arrow with the light, then you're good to go in the depths in my opinion. But to even do this, you have to have the items that I already mentioned, and it doesn't help that the toughest enemies are also found here. Besides the Bakos being dipped in gloom, the depths are also full of bosses for you to face. Around every corner there's something to find, which is kinda the story of Tears of the Kingdom. You might stumble upon a hidden chest with an outfit, or you could walk up on a marbled Goma guarding a surplus amount of crystallized charges. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the temple bosses being used elsewhere, as it does kinda diminish their impact. Because of this increase in enemy difficulty, the rewards are also much better for your weapons. So even if you go through the majority of your cooked items or weapons, you're sure to have even better items for when you return to the overworld. Exploring the depths in the simplest of terms is just one big mystery. You never know what might be in front of you, so you're always hurrying to the next light route, but the fun is getting there and discovering your personal method on how you're going to go about doing this. Also, the game purposely does not do a good job explaining how to go about traversing the depths, so it truly is up to you to experiment and fail your way through until you find what works. However, I did take one issue with this aspect of the game. That issue is that the underworld of Hyrule is pretty bland. At a glance, it reminded me of a favorite movie of mine, Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind. Although the dark fungal forest of Nausicaa is filled with life and beauty everywhere. It's dense and the overgrowth is full of color. In contrast, the depths is hollow and there isn't much variation in the flora anywhere. You have some variety in mushroom trees, rocks, and broken down mines and structures, but that's about it. Yes, there's some landmarks such as the Yiga bases, the Construct Factory, and some others, but none of them really stand out like many of the locations of the overworld. I don't believe this takes away from the experience, as it still offers a whole new set of rules for the game, but the environment is still samey for the most part. Now, this is not unique to the depths, but there also isn't really a soundtrack. Although I'm a fan of the dark ambience, I would still much prefer something more like this. The Depths takes the overworld formula and basically says, that's not important anymore, we have different rules down here, and so far, some of my favorite memories have been in the underworld, which I still have a lot to explore. However, there is another completely fresh map in Tears of the Kingdom, so how well does the Depths hold up against the Sky Islands? This is what was advertised. I expected to play majority of the game up in the sky, and I was surely wrong. The game even begins on the Great Sky Island, which to me was a hint of what was to come. However, what we got instead was a surplus amount of smaller, more spread out islands. That being said, nothing beats the atmosphere up in the sky. Something about being up there seeing across the entire map is just amazing. You might see islands in the distance that seem unreachable, so it's up to you to craft a way to get there. This is where building is at its best in my opinion, and is where I learned to do it. Unlike the Depths, where you're pushed to create more land-based vehicles across the gloom, the sky has you building all sorts of flying vehicle variations, whether it be for navigation or solving many of the sky's puzzles. Some of my favorite moments up there involve spotting something seemingly out of reach and then crafting something that can get me there. Although not required, it is very helpful for you to have auto build rather than strictly rely on what's provided. And again, without auto build, crafting can be very tedious, and I really didn't start building until I unlocked this ability. However, the one thing I always look forward to doing when visiting the sky besides the puzzle solving was fighting the Flux constructs. The setting in the clouds, the music, the unique fight style with the Ultra Hand, it was all just a breath of fresh air. Now, I'd be lying if I said these battles didn't grow stale, because after the first few you kind of know what to expect and figure out the constructs are some of the easiest bosses in the game, and that they don't even produce the best loot. That being said, I still fought them at every chance I got for the music alone. However, the Sky Islands did tend to fall into a pattern. Unlike the Depths, where you never know what you're going to find, whenever you blast into the sky after activating a tower, you can surely expect the same style of play. You land on an island, you find a shrine and Zonai dispenser, you then do said shrine or find a crystal. It took me a bit to realize this pattern, but after a while the Sky Island started to lose that sense of wonder to me. Because of this, I started to build better and visit more distinct islands such as the Zonite Forge Island. But I was still left disappointed when discovering the only thing present was a shrine. I expected this large structure to carry at least a little bit more value than just a shrine. Yes, there's more unique areas such as the Stormy Thunderhead Isles, which I've only tapped into a little, but the vast majority of islands are made up of basic rock structures, and it doesn't help that primarily the only enemies you'll find are constructs. I was browsing for some Tears of the Kingdom sky art online, and I found this picture, and to me this is exactly what I kind of wish the Sky Islands were. But to bring it all together, something I appreciated about these two separate maps was that they do kind of go hand in hand. In the sky, you'll find Sundalines to help cook gloom-based meals, Zonai dispensers, and chest-marked treasures for the Depths. While in the Depths, you'll be able to stock up on Zonite, so you're able to auto-build flying vehicles in the sky. No matter which place you're in, you'll find the necessary resources for you to progress. However, only one of these areas has enough content to keep you busy for hours and hours, and that's the Depths. As I mentioned, the Depths has its own set of rules to follow and a surplus amount of side missions, adventures, bosses, and enemies within it. That's not to mention that it's also the most challenging aspect of the game. It's definitely overwhelming at first, as you have no idea the proper way to go about navigating it, but once you learn the ropes, it's truly an experience to have, and I for one have barely tapped into it compared to the Sky and Overworld. I don't think it helps that you begin the game on the Great Sky Island, because you don't find anything even close in size and depth to it. I did enjoy the journeys to the wind and water temples in the sky, but besides that, I do think a lot of it begins to blend in both design and structure. While the Depths has essentially no structure, it is completely up to you. Tears of the Kingdom is such a large game with so much to do, but the Sky Islands are a minimal part of the much larger Overworld and Depths. I still have a lot left to do in the game and seem to always be finding something of interest. Anyways, let me know whether you prefer the Sky or the Depths in the comments below, and I plan to make at least one more Tears of the Kingdom video based on my favorite part of the game, the Overworld.